Hey, everybody, welcome to Jen Lowry Writes. Today, I am so honored to be able to introduce you to Shawn Verdoni. Guys, she's the author of Canoodling Up North, Canoodling Out West. Oh, show them off. Oh, let's do ooh ah. Ooh ah. Look at that, y'all. And she's working on her third book. So we get to hear about the past, the present, and future of Shawn's work. She attended UW Whitewater for her degree in secondary education and is currently attending MSOE to complete her master's in business administration. Her best days are spent with her husband, 2 children, and 2 dogs just hanging out. She loves living in Wisconsin, especially in fall when you can find her in a pumpkin patch or on an apple orchard collecting tart baking apples for her famous crumble crust apple pie. Insider now, you're on the show. You can send us some recipes. So, Shawn, it's so nice to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Jen. I'm really excited about this.
So, okay, 2 books already out, working on your third. Where are you, like, in the process of that book?
So, the third book wasn't even in my in my scope of thought, and then my focus group said, "Well, we need to find out what happens to the best friend orally. What happens to her?" I was like, "Well, that's a really good question. Let's figure that out." And so I was writing it, and I got into the 5th chapter over Labor Day weekend, and then my computer crashed, and I lost the last chapter and a half. So I figured God was just sending me a message that it wasn't written well and I needed to start all over.
There you go. That's a good positive outlook.
So I'm in the 5th chapter as we speak.
Wonderful. So, okay, guys, behind you, no, that's not her decorations in her dining room. Shawn, tell everybody where you are right now because I absolutely love where you are.
Yeah, I'm at the Mukwonago Community Library in the village of Mukwonago, which has been my hometown for 21, almost 22 years now.
So she's sitting at a public library. Absolutely love library systems. And so, Shawn, you got to tell the story because, guys, we were talking before I even hit like record, and I was hearing all the insider work. Shawn, you got to tell everybody about when did that inspiration really click for you?
Absolutely. So in the summer of 2017, a local author came and she was doing a Q&A for her book at the time, The Simplicity of Cider, and her name is Amy Reichert. I highly recommend her books. And during that Q&A, I just told her, I said, I love to write, but I can't seem to finish anything. And so so she and I talked for a few minutes, and she gave me some great ideas to break that barrier down. And so it took me 15 months to write these 2 books consecutively.
Oh, wow. That's a quick turnaround. Look at you. And then how long had you wanted to be an author before those 15 months?
I think as soon as I learned how to write my ABC.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
no, I was always writing, and I loved having, I don't know, your age and my age are a little different. I feel like I'm a little bit older than you, but I loved having those little like pink diaries with the little gold locks on there, and always writing stuff down. So
I'm
it was
46. I will let you know I'm 46. I can claim it. But I remember those diaries. I remember
yeah.
those back in the day.
Yeah, so I've always been writing. I've got a very strong creative mind. I even in my dreams, I dream in color and sometimes even sense. I can smell things in my dreams, and it's just it's a blessing and a curse sometimes. So it's a really great way to get. For me, there's also the mental health journey for me is through my journaling and my writing as well.
So when you wanted to be an author growing up, you didn't see that as a potential career. You just loved to write.
So what basically happened is when I was fairly young, I had a lot of positive um, support from my parents to be whatever I wanted to be. And believe me, I thought I could be an entertainer. My brother and I used to have a Donnie and Marie opening act. You know, I'm a little bit country, he was a little bit rock and roll, and we did that at all the family gatherings.
Oh, love it.
You know, I had short stories that I wrote for school, and I wrote for the paper and the yearbooks and things. But I also thought I could be an excellent teacher. So I thought I could do all three of those things at once, right? And then in 1981, August 5th, my dad had been uh, an air traffic controller, and they had gone out on strike. And the president at the time, President Reagan, fired everybody, and it completely shattered my life. Everything. I had a beautiful house in the country. We had a dog. We went on vacations, and we lost everything. We had absolutely nothing. And then my parents' relationship dissolved. We had to sell the dog, the cars, the whole shebang, and we were absolutely destitute, living with relatives until my mom could get a job. And so I had to pivot, and that creativity had to get on the back burner. We were all in survival mode. You know, my babysitting money helped mom pay some bills, and and so I had to put that in the back pocket and just find a way through. So I thought the safest bet for me was to become a teacher. And so when I graduated high school in 1986, I had it in my head I was going to be a high school history teacher, because I'm a great storyteller. I knew that, and I thought I could keep everybody entertained with the cool stories. But I loved English and I loved writing, but I thought, I will just make sure that I do really great on my papers for school. And then when I got into my junior year at college, and I don't know if you remember this, but there was actually a surplus of teachers nationally.
It's
You
not
couldn't,
like that now.
no, but you couldn't get a job for anything. I had a friend of mine who was a 4.0 student, and she and I could only get substitute teaching jobs.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It was completely packed nationally. I was traveling in different states too to try to find a job and couldn't find anything.
Oh, wow.
So I just, again, had to go into survival mode. And that's kind of how I got into what my current career is, which is a professional fundraiser and grant writer for healthcare.
And there you go, writing again. It's just
Yep.
in a different format. But what is the purpose of that project, and what is the goals and the projected outcomes? But
You got it.
it's still writing the same. Using the gifts that you have been given in a way to serve other people.
And it's storytelling, but you're
Yeah.
exactly right. It's in a different way. And I tell you, I write for a variety of different programs, but one that really touches my heart is the Hispanic Health Resource Center, with my current employer. They provide translation and just basic information about how to figure out the bus system so they can be places. And the Hispanic seniors oftentimes don't speak English, and they are often isolated. And so one of the things that they had asked for was, could they have a community garden? And so I found a place and raised the money so that they can have a garden. And it doesn't take a lot of money to run it. It's about $5,000 a year. But they write me cards and give me little Christmas coasters and things that they've made. And they think of me as an angel. And you can't, it's like when your kid smiles at you the first time, there is no money that anybody could give me that would give me that kind of joy.
It's
So
gifts that keep on giving. It's gift of
yes,
service, and it's a gift from heart. And that's what author world is like too.
exactly. I mean, can you remember the first time you wrote a word and somebody other than your family got to read it and gave you positive
Oh, yeah.
feedback?
And it was that validation that, oh, wow, this actually is something that matters to me, but could matter to someone else. Yep.
Exactly. And that's what happened to me. So I'm kind of lost in what year this was, but it was definitely a year and a half, 2 years ago. We were at we were having lunch. I was having lunch with my work buddies, and at work we were having some real challenges, and so we were using lunchtime as kind of like a team building. And I blurted out, because it seemed like we needed something positive to talk about, that I was writing a book. Scared myself senseless saying it,
Oh, because you
but
said it out loud,
I
which
said
meant
it
you
out
have
loud.
to do it, right?
Exactly.
You have to go through with what you just said to people. They're gonna hold you
Right.
accountable.
And all of us were really passionate about watching This Is Us. And so I set up a focus group for them to come over to my house on a Tuesday night. And I was thinking that they were going to come back with things like, punctuation and grammar and things like that, and word use. And instead, they were already engaged in the storyline and seeing themselves in different characters and talking about what should be happening next and things. And it blew me away, and I'm like, maybe I've got something here. And so I finished the book in September of 18, I think. And I kind of let it sit and simmer, and just kind of, because again, I work full time. At that time, I was also going to school, and I was the president of the McWanago Education Foundation. So I had a few things on my plate,
Yeah, sounds like it.
but I didn't know if it was worth publishing. I had about 20 women from different backgrounds, and that were in my focus group, and they all said, yes, I think it's worth publishing. But I had no idea. So I had to do some research. I had to do a lot of soul searching, and then I left it up to the powers that be. And, I found an independent publisher, and I think you've met her, Carrie.
Yes, yes.
And so her publishing house, The Unapologetic Voice, looks for strong female characters and writers that want to amplify the female voice. And certainly Kat Carnary, who's my main character in these two books, she is of that kind of caliber. And I strive to be that kind of a person too.
It's wonderful that you have found a perfect match.
Yeah, and I recently listened to your podcast with Ed Davis, and
Yes.
there was a lot of conversation around that, and I feel like I've still got a lot to learn.
Don't we all, though? Like, seriously.
Well,
Don't
how
we
long have you
all?
been writing, though?
Oh, it was writing or actually publishing? Because
Okay,
writing is
publishing.
that
Yes,
one. That's like you and I.
good
We could
point.
go back, way back. But yeah, since 2018, when I had my first contract. So I signed my first
Okay.
contract in 2018, and I moved forward with traditional publishing too. And that's when I started
Congratulations.
researching and learning. And I'm still researching, and I'm still learning. I'm still building my author community, and
Mm-hmm.
still, reaching out to friends even today, asking questions to my author friends. Hey, what did you do? Let me find out what you did. Like, oh, I haven't done that yet, but let me go look. And so let me ask somebody else. I mean, it's like it's a daily journey. It's not like this whole
Yes.
final destination thing. This is like something that we do with a passion put to good use. And it's just a constant, let's learn what's happening and how things evolve and change and grow.
Yeah, it's kind of like in the movie Finding Nemo. I feel like I'm Dory most of the time. I just keep swimming, just keep swimming.
But hey, you've got that positive mindset. You have
Yeah.
it, you have that positive mindset. You're looking for, you understand there's growth for all of us. You understand that your work does matter. You've got two out there. So
Yeah.
once you hit book one, you already had book 1 and 2 written though.
Yes.
So talk about what had you go that full route instead of waiting. Because I've met authors that say, well, I'm writing book 2. I've always had book 1, but never took the plunge for the second. What had you write 1 and 2 all at that same time before going out to pitch?
Well, the reality is I put it all together as one story. It was over 420 some pages.
Okay.
And when I did do some pitching, I picked about 200 agents that I thought I could, and I pitched to only about 10% of them. And nothing happened. And so I just like, you know what, I'm putting it down. And then there was some serendipity that happened to get me connected to Carrie. And so I gave her the whole manuscript, and she said, yeah, she'd love to publish it. But then she was honest with me, and she said, um, you're not going to make a single dime if we put this as one book at 420 some pages. She's like, is there a way that we can split it into two? And so I thought about it. I'm like, well, there was a very specific scene that happens in book one at the end, and I was like, okay, if we end it there, then I think the second book can be, something else. So I did have to add like a prelude to the first to the second book, to Canoodling Out West, just in case, you know people didn't read the first book, or they just needed a little refresher. So I did a little bit editing there, but it concludes their story. And um, I feel like the Canoodling Up North, the first book, was kind of like my uh, what do I want to say? Like my honeymoon phase, just like the honeymoon phase of the characters. But then Canoodling Out West, I found myself writing in a different way. It was much
Mm.
deeper, much more thoughtful, and it tugged at my heartstrings, and I went through more Kleenex than I usually do.
And do you think that's because you've just lived with your characters for so long, or that you were just actually seeing them grow in their character arc and just develop over time?
I think it was both,
Ah,
I
yeah.
mean, because my writing prior to this was nonfiction. One of the things that kind of spurred me to get back to that creative juice again was when we moved here to McWanago in 2000. We had this absolutely hysterical Christmas Day meal, and the whole Christmas Day was a fiasco. I can't tell. We had turkey juices up in the ceiling,
Oh, wow.
and
That's
we
like
had 20 gallons of frozen peanut oil in the garage, and it was just a hoot. And I couldn't tell the story without laughing and crying, so I wrote it down, and then it kind of became viral, and people were dropping their hot coffee in their laps. They were laughing so hard at the story. And so I realized, I was like, you know I'm like everybody else. If somebody is sending me a Christmas letter that's, oh, Mitzi and Poopsie are all, they're valedictorians, and John and Bobby are over here and they just made their first million. People don't read those stories because it's too perfect. So I go for the anti-perfect, and people ask to be on my Christmas list because I'm talking about the toilet paper in my shoe for a half a day, and stuff like that. And so that kind of got my juices flowing on that. But I didn't know how to do fiction, I kept going back to this anthology idea,
huh?
but I could never finish it. And so that's when Amy Reichert, the author, she said to me, her first thing was, well, have you ever thought about writing fiction? And I said, I don't know. I've never written it. And she said, all you have to do is take all these great family stories, and you get to choose the ending,
Ah.
and you get to pick the characteristic out of yourself and your husband and your godmother and whatever, and turn it into a single person, and you get to choose what happens to them.
Freedom and liberty and joy.
Yeah, and it was just like, holy cow.
Did
So,
you say, like, wait, is it that easy? Is that the missing recipe?
but I think, and I feel like I'm babbling, but to your question
No,
before,
no.
is it just because you didn't know you were learning about your characters, or that's how the arc was? There, I can tell you, with each of these characters, there's a piece of me in every single one of them.
Yeah.
And then, but in Canoodling Up North, it's primarily me. Probably about 75% of Kat is me, and then there's a good solid 10% that's her. she just came alive, which I'm sure you've got stories like that where all of a sudden you think the story's going this way and all of a sudden your character is going, no, we're going this way instead.
Yep.
And then in the second book, um, I'm I'm about Damon is about 75% me because of my mental health journey, and his are very similar. They're parallel. But talking about the cool, going back to how your characters come alive. There was a secondary character I built in the first book, and so Damon's best friend is Pete Rossi, and Pete is married to Angie, and Angie is pregnant in the first book, and then she has the baby at the end of this in the beginning of the second book. And when Damon gets into his pinnacle of his mental health crisis, I had to figure out a character that could help him through that. And as I went through my Rolodex of who would be the right person, the only person that made sense was Angie. So then I had to figure out who was Angie, because she really didn't have a personality, or she didn't have that full body that I had built with the other characters. And so there's at least one specific scene that, of course, I was crying. It turned out so beautiful. And she just has this wonderful monologue with him. Just basically, she takes the I don't know if you've ever been to Wisconsin, but especially in Erin, Wisconsin, Irish immigrants chose Erin, Wisconsin to build their church, their Catholic church there at the top of this hill. And Wisconsin's not known for mountains, but it's as close to a mountain as we're going to get. So where he lives is at the base of this holy hill. And so it's in fall, and so her dialogue with him, her monologue, is basically talking about how each tree needs another tree to help take care of it. It can't be a tree on its own. It needs the leaves coming to help support the roots, and it just, I'm not saying it well here, but I say it a heck of a lot better in the book. But when I
You
was
mean Angie says it a lot better in the book?
that's right, Angie. And I was just like, gosh darn it, Angie, good for you. That
Yeah.
was really cool. Thank you for coming alive for me, because I didn't know who you were before.
But she knew, and it wasn't her turn to show
Yeah.
up and shine.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. So it was just, that's what kind of gives me the passion to continue. There's two pieces to it for me. It's how the story begins to tell itself, and it has its own life. It's a living and breathing thing for me. And then also when I get to share it with people, and that it causes an emotion, that they have an emotional attachment to it. So it's very, very powerful.
So talk about that part. Let's talk about, so we've talked about the writing, the craft, and how you've gotten them here, and now they're out in the world. What has been some of those great joyful moments for you? Like first events, first time seeing the book, like what are some things that really stand out to you that just brought you so much joy?
So the first thing, and I'm sure it happened with you too, is, again, going back to my imagery, I have very specific ideas of what the book is supposed to look like. And when the first one came, I wanted it to look like the gloaming, at the end of the day, like the sun is setting. And so when I got this, I was just like, that's exactly it. That is so perfect. And I wanted it simple and just kind of that peaceful peace. And then when it got out into the world, one of the cool things that happened at this woman that I'd never met before, and it turns out that we were kind of missing each other in the world. Once we found each other, we've got so many connections. It's crazy. And she bought my book at one of the pieces, and she read it in like less than a week, and she's like now my biggest fan. And she was just like, you've made these characters come alive, and I feel them, and they're breathing for me, and it's so powerful. And then in the second book, there's a lot more, like I said before, a lot more emotion to it. It's a deeper dive, because any relationship, you have to have that deep dive. You have to hit the hard stuff to figure out whether or not you can really make that relationship work. And so she came back after that. She goes, I'm just exhausted, but a good exhausted. Right?
Right, right. I just love it, the whole description of all of that, because that's what we write for.
Yeah. I mean, granted, spoiler alert, I write for me. I want to feel positive about these books. I want it to have a positive ending at the end. It may not be the one that the reader wants right away, but it makes sense to me. And there's just too much sadness in the world that I can't write something that's going to end up sad. It's
Hey,
not
I
right.
will let you know there is a place for those happily ever afters, and there is a market for that, and that we want that in a book. Now, I have been very upset reading a book, and you're like, wait, what? Why does it always have to
Yes.
end it? So trust me, I feel you on that, Shawn. Like, we need a little bit more of that goodness in the world.
Yeah, like The Summer of My German Soldier. I read that when I was in middle school, and it was a Newbery Award winning book. I was depressed for 2 weeks at the end of that book. I'm like,
Like,
okay, that's not cool.
oh, so talk about books that maybe have inspired you as an author. That's a good thought about.
Oh,
Do you have some that you just absolutely want to hug right now?
you're killing me. I didn't prepare for that, but that's a
It's a hard
really
one.
good question.
Yeah, it's a hard question though, because how can you pick just one?
It's hard, but I do go back to the same authors, and I do reread. Now, not
Ah,
everybody rereads, but if I get something, it's just, I don't know. I know you've written some young adult stuff,
yes.
but Colleen Hook and her Tiger Curse series,
I'm
you
getting my pencil. Hold
you
on.
got to get a copy of that, man. It is incredibly cool. It's it's
It's
it's
the
a
tiger. The tiger.
Tiger Curse.
All right, I written it
It
out
was
here.
4 books, and by the end of the fourth book, I was like, it ended exactly the way I wanted it to end. And then she came out with a fifth book, and I'm like, she's evil, she's the devil. I
Let's go
am
buy it.
so angry.
Let's go
And
buy
you
it.
know what happened?
You bought it. You got it. You
I
you.
got it, and she flipped the whole story on its end. It's like in a fourth dimension. It blew my mind, and I was like, oh my god, how can you write like that? It's just, she's amazing.
I'm
She's,
looking her up. I'm
so
looking her up.
you got to but yeah, and then also like oh gosh, Nora Roberts, the way how she always does trilogies,
Oh my
that's
man,
kind
yeah.
of, so that's what the Canoodling series is going to be like too. It's like, so now in the third book, which is My Higgledy Piggledy Life, um, it's Orly's chance to be, the protagonist, and then Kat and Damon are going to be in the foreground, in the background, so that she can shine. So I kind of like that idea too, that Nora Roberts puts in. But again, her books, they almost always have at least a happy ending. I may not always like, it's not exactly perfect, but I can handle those.
It's full circle. I call those full circle books
Yes,
for me. It takes
that's
me
what I
full
want.
circle. Yep, full circle
I
stories.
want
That's for me.
closure.
Yes.
I don't have closure. I am just, you don't want to be around me.
Or just let me know the next one's coming. That's
Yes.
what happened with you, Shawn, though, because your focus group was like, okay, this can't be the end. There's
No.
got to be more.
Exactly, exactly. And that's wonderful, because I didn't realize that I had more in me. I thought this might be it. And then boom, it hit, and it was fabulous.
So now that you've learned that, you've got miles to go.
Thank
You've
you.
got stories to go. and just embrace it, because I love how you say like how much joy it brings you just to see where stories take you. So it looks like you don't wrestle with that kind of control over your story. You give your story that freedom to breathe.
So what it makes me, I'm usually a very organized person. I'm totally, where I go Christmas shopping is the office supply store. Okay. That's just the kind of person I am. You know, my pen color needs to match my Post-it note color, the whole shebang. But when it comes to the story, I have an overarch of where it starts, where it ends. And then for each chapter, I have a starting point and where I want it to end, but I let it ebb and flow within that chapter.
Love that process. I
Yeah,
love it. And I love that you've learned that all on your own and just figured it out what works for you, and just by
yeah,
writing, like write it. So
exactly.
if you had to leave us with some words of wisdom for authors out there who are chasing after these dreams or have a story, but they're not sure about telling it yet, what would you say to them?
For me, don't don't wait for perfection because you're never going to finish it. Just keep writing. Do the Dory thing. Just keep writing, just keep writing, just keep writing. It doesn't have to be perfect. And that's the first thing that the focus group told me. They're like, we just want you to finish it. We don't want you to perfect it. We'll tell you if there's something that needs to be perfected. Just finish it. And that's how the story was able to ebb and flow and have a life of its own, because I didn't worry about that punctuation was going to be wrong, or that, you know, I spelled a word wrong or whatever. I just let it go and and gave myself the okay. You know, it's
Mhm.
okay that it's not perfect, but
And this
it's finished.
and the story lives on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah,
So,
and Shawn, I just want to thank you for being here, taking your time out, like putting me in a public library right now, just hugging you through the screen. I just want to say thank you for just spending time with me today and
oh,
sharing
Jen,
your journey.
thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this, and
Yes,
I hope that you have a blessed holiday season with your
you too.
family, and best wishes for you and your publishing and writing
Ah,
journey as well.
thank you. Thank you. All right. So, where can people connect with you? You've got an awesome website.
Thank you. Yeah, the
Tell them where
website
we can
is
find you.
so the website is my name. It's shawnverdoni.com, and I'm also on all social media, primarily Instagram and Facebook. So please feel free to look me up, and you can buy the books online. Amazon is probably the easiest place, but I've also seen that I'm on Target and Barnes and Nobles. So, oh, there we are.
There,
So
there.
there you go.
All right, guys, look what I'm doing. Oh, look, I just followed you on Instagram, and I will find you
Yay!
everywhere else.
Thank you so
So,
much, Ben.
just so nice to meet you. Let's stay in touch.
I'd love
Stay in
that.
touch. And guys, thank you for joining us on Jen Lowry Writes. Go out and check Shawn's work out. Follow her on social media. Contact her. Shawn, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you
All
so
right,
much
guys.
for the invite. Have a great rest of your day, Jen.
Bye, guys.